reading goodnight stories with Bored Grandma. Good evening, it's Grandma. Are you all tucked in and ready for bed? Do you have your teeth brushed? Well, if so, you're ready for a story. So just sit back, relax, and let's start. Tonight, I'm going to read to you about Leola and the Honeybears, an African-American retelling of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. "Look, Grandmama, look!" Leola sang out as she struggled to pull the biggest, wettest bedsheet from the laundry basket. Mondays was always wash day, and much to her grandmother's surprise, Leola had decided to help hang out the sheets. "Listen, child, just put down that sheet before you get it all full of dirt," fussed Leola's grandmother. "You go on and play now, but don't you go straying off anywhere, and don't go talking to any strangers." Then she went back to her wash. When she looked up again, Leola was merrily dancing away, headed for the nearby meadow. "You hear me, Leola?" Grandmama shouted after her. "Mind me, and don't you go straying off." Leola did hear her grandmother, but she paid her no mind. She didn't even answer her. Leola and her grandmother lived in a small, cozy cottage not far from the Pine Hollow woods. When Leola got her way, she could be as sweet as brown sugar, but when she didn't, she could be as stubborn as Grandma's old mule. Today, Leola could find nothing fun to do. "I'm bored," she complained, "and I don't care what Grandmama says. I'm going to do what I want to." Suddenly, Leola caught sight of some milkweed seeds blowing in the breeze across the meadow. "Oh, wee!" she squealed as she watched the silky pods float farther and farther from the cottage. Off she ran, chasing after them. After running for a while, Leola finally looked back. Nothing looked familiar. But Leola didn't care. She was having too much fun following the cotton-like balls right into the Pine Hollow woods. Before she knew it, Leola was surrounded by prickly bushes and towering pine trees. The skylight had all but disappeared. She turned around full circle, but she couldn't tell which way was home. "Oh no!" cried Leola as she stared into the darkness. "I must be lost." Now, way down deep in the Pine Hollow woods stood a charming little inn. It was owned by a family known as the Honeybears. Papa Honeybear was a great big bear. Mama Honeybear was a middle-sized bear. Little Honey was little, just like his name. Woodland folks from far and near came to visit the Honeybears Inn. They dined on delicious daily delights like dandelion stew, double-dipped daffodil custard, and sweet daisy dough cakes. Cheerful chatter and hearty laughter always filled the inn. Come evening time, Papa Honeybear sat in his great big oak chair and gobbled his great big toasted walnuts. Mama Honeybear sat in her middle-sized easy chair and munched her middle-sized roasted nuts. And little Honey sat in his little wooden chair and nibbled his little chocolate-covered pine nuts. On this particular morning, after Mama Honeybear had served the last of her boysenberry grits to Mr. Hare and his grandbaby Bunny, she decided to make her own special treats for her own family. She baked a great big plum pie for Papa Honeybear and a middle-sized rose petal cobbler for herself and a little huckleberry tart for little Honey. When Papa Honeybear and little Honey had finished their morning chores, they were as hungry as, well, bears. "Oh, darlings," chuckled Mama Honeybear, "those pies just came out of the stove. They're much too hot now. Why don't we head over to Parson's Pond and catch a mess of catfish? By the time we get back, I'm sure the pies will be cool enough to eat." Meanwhile, poor Leola was still wandering around the deepest, darkest part of the Pine Hollow woods. "I promise I will listen to my grandmama no matter how much I want to do what I want to," Leola said. "Just please let me find my way back home." Weary and confused, Leola plopped down on a damp patch of ground. Suddenly, the cool forest air filled with warm, sweet smell. "That must be my grandmama's crackling biscuit baking," said Leola. "Now I know I can find my way." But before Leola finished, old Mr. Weasel came slowly sleeking by. "Howdy, sweet little missy," he said in his oily voice. Old Mr. Weasel gave a sly smirk as he hungrily licked his lips. Leola quickly hopped to her feet at the sight of the stranger. Old Mr. Weasel laughed out loud. Now, child, I don't mean to scare you none." He slithered around this way and that way, just wanting to eat you whole. With that, Leola took off running as fast as her feet could carry her, following the sweet smell that still filled the woods. Soon she came to a large clearing. As Leola wiped the sweat from her brow, she saw a little house in the distance. "That must be a stranger's house," Leola thought to herself as she looked back over her shoulder for old Mr. Weasel. "I know my grandmama told me about strangers, but I can't go back 'cause old Mr. Weasel will eat me for sure." So Leola headed straight for the Honeybears Inn. She knocked on the heavy wooden door, but no one answered. The door was open just a little, so she poked her head in. "Hello," Leola hollered. "Excuse me, please. Are you folks in?" Still, no one answered. "I know my grandma said, never go inside folks' houses until first being politely asked, but I don't think she'd mind this time," and she quietly crept inside. The first thing to catch Leola's eye were the tasty-looking treats setting out on the kitchen counter. "Oh-wee!" Leola squealed. "I'm so hungry. I know my grandmama said never help yourself to folks' kitchens until first being politely asked, but I don't think she'd mind this time." So Leola stuck her small finger into Papa Honeybear's great big plum pie and tasted it. "Oh no," Leola cried as she puckered her lips. It was much too sour. Then she took a taste from Mama Honeybear's middle-sized rose-petal cobbler. Oh no, that was much too sweet. Finally she tasted Little Honey's little huckleberry tart, and it was absolutely delicious. Leola gobbled it down right then and there. "Oh, I'm so tired," Leola said as she let out a big yawn. "I know my grandmama said, never sit down in folks' houses until you're first politely asked. But I don't think she'd mind this time." Leola was beginning to feel right at home. First, she sat in Papa Honeybear's great big chair, but it was much too hard, and so were his toasted walnuts. Then she sat in Mama Honeybear's middle-sized chair, but it was much too soft, and so were her roasted chestnuts. Finally, Leola sat in Little Honey's little wooden chair. It felt like it was made just for her, and she loved his chocolate-covered pine nuts. She ate every one. Yummy, yum, yum. Before long, Leola had stuffed herself so full of huckleberry tart and chocolate-covered pine nuts that the buttons on her dress began to pull and her tummy began to ache. And then, kaboom! Little Honey's little wooden chair broke all to pieces. "Oh my," Leola moaned. "I know my grandmama said never make yourself too comfortable in folks' houses until first politely asked, but I don't think she'd mind this time." Leola dragged herself up from the floor and looked for a place to lie down. At the top of the stairs, Leola found the Honeybears' bedroom with 3 neatly made beds all in a row. First she lay down on Papa Honeybear's great big bed, but it was much too hard. Then she lay down on Mama Honeybear's middle-sized bed, but it was much too soft. Finally, she lay down on Little Honey's little bed, and it was just right. Without another yawn, Leola fell fast asleep. By this time, the Honeybears were on their way home, laughing and singing their favorite fishing song. "Many fish are in the brook, Papa caught 'em with a hook, Mama fried 'em in a pan, Baby ate 'em like a man." When Papa Honeybear swung open the door, the Honeybears could not believe their eyes. Their cozy little inn looked like a strong gust of wind had just whipped through it. Everything was upside down and inside out. "Look!" growled Papa Honeybear in his great big bear voice. "Somebody's been eating my plum pie. And look!" Mama Honeybear in her middle-sized bear voice. "Somebody's been eating my rose petal cobbler." "And look!" squealed Little Honey in his little bear voice. "Somebody ate every bit of my huckleberry tart." "Look!" Papa Honeybear growled in a great big bear voice. "Somebody's been sitting in my chair, eating my walnuts." "And somebody's been sitting in my chair," cried Mama Honeybear in her middle-sized voice, "and they left chestnuts all over it. And somebody helped themselves to all my chocolate-covered peanuts and broke my chair all to pieces," squealed little Honey in his little voice, and his little brown eyes welled up with tears. "Shh," Mama Honeybear whispered. "What's that strange sound?" With Papa Honeybear leading the way, they all tiptoed up the stairs. They crept past Papa Honeybear's great big bed and around Mama Honeybear's middle-sized bed until they reached little Honey's little bed, and they gasped at what they saw. "Look!" squealed little Honey. "A stranger!" Startled, Leola woke up and saw 3 angry-looking bears leaning over her. "Oh, please, don't eat me!" Leola cried. "We're not going to eat you," Mama Honeybear said sternly. "But didn't your folks teach you any manners?" "Yes, ma'am," Leola stammered. "My grandma always told me, never go into folks' houses, and never help yourself to folks' kitchens, and never ever sit down and make yourself too comfortable until first being politely asked. But I can't find my way back home, and old Mr. Weasel tried to eat me, and I was so scared and hungry, and I didn't think anyone would mind just this time." As the tears flowed down Leola's face, Mama Honeybear saw that she was only a youngster, no different than her little Honey. Soon, all was forgiven. Mama Honeybear took her best straw basket, stuffed it full of scrumptious treats, and covered it with one of her prettiest lace doilies. As she handed the basket to Leola, Mama Honeybear called to Miss Blackbird, who was hovering overhead. "Miss Blackbird, would you mind guiding this child back home? We don't want her getting lost again." "Why, surely, Mama Honey," Miss Blackbird replied. "But we need to get going, child. It'll be dark soon." Mama Honeybear gave Leola a tender goodbye bear hug. "You were lucky this time, Leola," she said, "but you might not be the next. Your grandmama told you right. She must love you very much." Leola had taken only a few steps down the path when she turned to wave at her new friends. Mama Honeybear pulled little Honey extra close, and Papa Honeybear put his arm around her as they all waved goodbye. As Leola neared the open meadow, she smelled fresh washed laundry flapping in the breeze. With home in sight, she heard her grandma calling, and this time Leola did answer back. From that day on, even when she wanted to do what she wanted to, Leola always listened to her grandmama. Well, most of the time. And she never stayed too far from home again.